I, 42F, have a daughter Emily, 16F, and a brother Jake, 35M. I need to provide some background to explain how things got to this point. Jake is my half-brother from my dad's second marriage to Linda, 58F. There's a 7-year age gap between us, and our relationship was always complicated. When Dad married Linda, I was 14 and struggling with accepting a new family. Jake was 7 at the time, and despite my initial resistance, he always tried to be close to me. He would follow me around and want to be included in everything I did. Our dad worked in construction and was away on projects most of the time, so Linda primarily raised Jake while I lived with my mom. I visited on weekends, but I was a typical teenager focused on my own life and friends. I wasn't mean to Jake, but I wasn't the big sister he wanted either. Dad tried his best to balance time between both families, but it was challenging. Everything changed when Dad had an accident at a construction site when Jake was 15 and I was 22. I was in my final year of college, dealing with exams and trying to figure out my future. Looking back, I regret not being there more for Jake during that time. Linda was devastated and struggled to cope with Dad's death. 6 months after the funeral, she decided to move across the country to be closer to her family, taking Jake with her. I got married young at 25 to David, whom I met in college. We had Emily a year later and life was good for a while. Jake and I stayed in touch through occasional calls and family updates on Facebook. He seemed to be doing well, excelling in school and later in his career in IT. David and I even flew out to attend Jake's college graduation. Then tragedy struck again. David was killed in a car accident when Emily was just 2. The next few years were a blur of grief, therapy sessions, and learning to be a single mom. Jake came to the funeral and stayed for a week to help, which meant a lot to me. After that, our contact became sporadic again, mainly holiday calls and social media likes. Emily grew up to be a sweet, creative girl, but she struggled with severe social anxiety since middle school. It started after an incident where she had a panic attack during a school presentation and some kids mocked her. The anxiety got worse over the years, despite our efforts with counseling and support groups. She can handle small gatherings of people she knows well, but large social events trigger panic attacks that leave her physically ill. Last year, Jake met Becca, 32F, at a tech conference. Their relationship moved quickly, and they got engaged after 8 months. I met Becca once at our cousin's wedding, and while she seemed nice enough, something felt off about how she kept pushing Emily to come out of her shell during the reception, even after I explained about her anxiety. The real problems started when they began planning their wedding. Becca wanted a huge traditional wedding with 8 bridesmaids and 3 junior bridesmaids. She decided Emily should be one of the junior bridesmaids, along with her nieces. Without even asking us first, she announced it on Facebook, tagging Emily in a post about my lovely future niece joining my bridal party. I immediately called Jake to explain why this wouldn't work. I detailed Emily's condition, explaining that being in front of hundreds of people would trigger severe anxiety. At first, he seemed understanding, but then Becca got involved in the conversation. She dismissed Emily's anxiety as just normal teenage shyness and insisted that being in the wedding would help her overcome her issues. Over the next few weeks, they launched a campaign to pressure us. Becca's bridesmaids started sending Emily messages about letting down the bride and ruining the wedding aesthetic. Jake called almost daily, alternating between guilt-tripping me about not supporting his happiness and accusing me of exaggerating Emily's condition for attention. Becca took it further by posting passive-aggressive comments on social media about how some people use their children as excuses to avoid family obligations. She even had her mother and sisters call me to lecture me about denying Emily such an important family bonding experience. Jake backed her up, saying I was using Emily's anxiety as an excuse because I was jealous of his happiness and had always tried to make everything about me. The situation reached its breaking point when they showed up unannounced at our house on a Sunday morning. Becca had brought a bridesmaid dress for Emily to try on, completely ignoring everything we had said. Emily was still in her pajamas, eating breakfast when they barged in. Becca thrust the dress at her, saying, "Time to try on your dress, sweetie. No more excuses." Emily had a severe panic attack. She ran to her room crying and hyperventilating. Instead of showing concern, Becca got angry and accused Emily of being manipulative. She said I had raised her to be weak and that she would never survive in the real world with me coddling her. Jake stood there silently while his fiancée berated his niece. I lost it at that point and told them both to get out. Jake finally spoke up, but only to attack me. He brought up how I wasn't there enough after our dad died, how I had always been cold and unsupportive, and how I was probably happy when my husband died so I could play the victim card forever. Becca joined in, suggesting that I was using Emily's supposed condition to keep her dependent on me, just like I had used Dad's death for attention. That was the absolute last straw. I physically pushed them toward the door and told them to never contact us again. I blocked them both on everything: phone, email, social media. Jake's mom started calling incessantly, saying I was tearing the family apart over a simple wedding request. Our cousins took their side, calling me overprotective and saying Emily needs to learn to face her fears. Jake and Becca are now telling everyone that I'm a controlling sister who never wanted Jake to be happy. They're threatening to tell Emily the truth about what a terrible aunt and sister I've been if I don't agree to their demands. I've saved screenshots of all their messages and comments in case I need to take legal action. Emily is devastated by how her uncle and future aunt have treated her, but she's also relieved that we're standing firm against their demands. I know I'm doing the right thing by protecting my daughter, but the constant family pressure is exhausting. Am I wrong for completely cutting them off over this? Update 1. Thank you everyone for the supportive comments on my original post. A lot has happened in the past 2 weeks, and I need to share some troubling developments and revelations. First, Jake and Becca tried to contact Emily directly through her school email, which they got from our cousin Amy, 31F. They sent her a lengthy message claiming I was manipulating her and keeping her from having normal teenage experiences. They wrote that they only wanted to help her overcome her shell and that if she trusted them, they could show her how to live without anxiety controlling her life. They even suggested she could stay with them for a few weeks during summer to experience life without constant maternal interference. Emily showed me the email as soon as she got it. She was upset but also furious at their attempt to manipulate her. What shocked me most was that they had included details about my past that Emily didn't know about, like suggesting I had abandoned Jake after our dad died and hinting that I had somehow contributed to my husband's death by being too controlling. Emily was smart enough to see through their tactics and decided to respond herself. Her response was clear and firm. She explained how their surprise visit with the dress had triggered one of her worst panic attacks in months, leaving her unable to attend school for 2 days. She told them how betrayed she felt that her uncle would allow his fiancée to dismiss her mental health struggles so casually. She ended by requesting they stop trying to contact her through any means. Their response was instant and hostile. Becca replied calling Emily ungrateful and disrespectful, saying she was just like her mother. Jake sent a separate email saying he was disappointed in how Emily had chosen to continue living in fear. They even threatened to show up at her school to talk sense into her. But here's where things took an unexpected turn. After seeing Becca's latest social media rants about our situation, Jake's ex-girlfriend Melissa, 34F, reached out to me. They had dated for 3 years before Becca, and Melissa had some disturbing information to share. According to Melissa, Becca had exhibited similar controlling behavior with her younger sister Rachel during the relationship. Rachel, who was then 16 and shy, became Becca's project. Becca would constantly force Rachel into uncomfortable social situations under the guise of helping her become more outgoing. She would organize surprise parties, sign Rachel up for public speaking events without permission, and belittle her when she showed any resistance. The situation culminated at a large charity gala Becca had pressured Rachel to attend. Rachel had a severe anxiety attack in front of hundreds of people, and instead of helping, Becca accused her of ruining the evening and embarrassing everyone. The incident was so traumatic that Rachel had to switch schools and start therapy. This controlling behavior was one of the main reasons Melissa ended her relationship with Jake. Melissa also revealed something more concerning. During their relationship, Jake had been understanding and supportive of people's boundaries. But after meeting Becca, he changed dramatically. He became dismissive of others' feelings and started adopting Becca's belief that mental health issues were just excuses for weakness. Melissa said she barely recognized him anymore. I shared this information with our Aunt Linda, 55F, who had been one of the most vocal critics of my decision to keep Emily away from the wedding. Linda was shocked and admitted that she had noticed similar patterns in Becca's behavior at family gatherings. She recalled how Becca had made disparaging comments about her own daughter's shyness at Christmas dinner, suggesting she needed to be fixed. The family dynamic shifted significantly after these revelations. Several relatives who had initially sided with Jake and Becca have since apologized to us. Even cousin Amy, who had given them Emily's email, came over personally to apologize and admit she should have asked us first. However, Jake's mom Linda is still defending them. She insists that Becca's tough love approach comes from a good place and that we're all being too sensitive. She's been calling other family members, trying to maintain support for Jake and Becca's side of the story. Through all of this, Emily has shown remarkable strength. Her counselor has been supportive of our decision to maintain firm boundaries and has praised Emily for standing up for herself in her email response. Emily told me she feels more confident now that she sees other people acknowledging her right to set boundaries about her own mental health. Becca has escalated her social media campaign, posting cryptic messages about the truth coming out soon and toxic family members who hide behind mental health excuses. Jake sent me a lengthy email dismissing Melissa's account as lies from a bitter ex and threatening to expose me at the wedding for turning his niece against him. After careful consideration, I've decided we won't attend the wedding at all, even as guests. Several other family members, including Aunt Linda and her family, have also declined their invitations. Jake and Becca are now complaining that we're ruining their perfect day and turning family against them. Emily suggested we take a mother-daughter trip during the wedding weekend, and I agreed. We're planning to visit a quiet beach town where she can practice her photography without pressure. I'm incredibly proud of how maturely she's handled this situation and how she's learning to advocate for herself. For now, we're focusing on maintaining our boundaries and supporting each other. The situation has actually brought us closer together, and Emily says she feels more secure in knowing I'll stand up for her no matter what. We'll see what happens next, but for now, we're at peace with our decision to keep our distance from Jake and Becca's toxic behavior. Update 2: The wedding happened last month, and while Emily and I were enjoying our peaceful beach trip, things apparently exploded back home. What I'm about to share came from several family members who attended the wedding, and it's worse than I imagined. Jake and Becca had prepared a revenge slideshow they planned to show at the reception. My cousin Tracy sent me clips of it. They had collected old social media posts, photos, and text messages spanning over 15 years, all edited to paint me as an attention-seeking, manipulative sister who had been sabotaging Jake's relationships since we were young. They even included photos from David's funeral, suggesting I was performing grief for sympathy. But the real shock came from Jake's mom, Linda. She finally broke down and revealed the truth behind their obsession with getting me to attend the wedding. Apparently, Becca had been pressuring Jake for months to get me to sign over my share of Dad's lake house property to them as a wedding gift. The property has been jointly owned by Jake and me since Dad's death, but I've been the one maintaining it and paying the taxes for years. Becca had already made plans to sell the property to help pay for their extravagant wedding and put a down payment on a house in an upscale neighborhood. When their bridesmaid scheme failed to get me to the wedding, they decided to try damaging my reputation instead, hoping the family pressure would force me to give in. Linda admitted she'd known about their plans but stayed quiet because Becca had threatened to cut her off from seeing any future grandchildren. She also revealed that Becca had been going through old family photos at Linda's house, taking pictures of personal documents and letters from when we were kids, looking for anything she could use against me. The wedding itself turned into a complete disaster. Right before the ceremony, Becca's sister Katie, who was the maid of honor, overheard Becca talking to her college friend. Becca was bragging about how once she was officially Emily's aunt, she would find a way to fix that kid whether I liked it or not. She even joked about sending Emily to some sort of boot camp for anxious teens. Katie, who had no idea about the previous drama, was horrified. She confronted Becca in the bridal suite, demanding an explanation. The argument got heated, with Becca finally admitting she never cared about Emily being a bridesmaid. It was all a ploy to pressure me about the lake house. She said Jake deserved the whole property because he lost his dad younger than I did. Jake defended her, saying I owed him because I got more time with Dad and that I was selfish for keeping half the property when they needed it more. This led to a huge argument in front of the wedding party. The ceremony still happened, but it was tense, and many guests left during the reception after word spread about what had really been going on. Now they're openly demanding I sell them my share of the lake house. They've sent emails claiming Jake deserved more of Dad's inheritance since he was younger when Dad died. They even suggested that because I was just a stepchild to Linda, Jake should have had full rights to any property from Dad's side of the family. I consulted our family lawyer, who confirmed they have no legal case. The property deed is clear, and Dad's will split everything equally between us. This seems to have made them even angrier. Becca's been telling people I forged documents to steal Jake's inheritance. Most of the family has now seen their true colors. Even Linda has apologized to Emily and me, bringing over old photo albums and crying about how she should have spoken up sooner. Katie reached out too, sharing more stories about Becca's troubling behavior over the years. Apparently, Becca has a history of targeting vulnerable family members and trying to gain control over property and assets. The silver lining in all this is that Emily feels validated. Seeing Becca's true motives helped her understand that none of this was ever about her anxiety, she was just being used as a pawn in their scheme. She's actually the one who suggested we organize all the evidence and documentation in case they try to escalate things further. I've decided to maintain full no contact with both of them. Several family members have done the same, not wanting to deal with their manipulation and lies. I still can't believe they were willing to exploit Emily's mental health struggles just to try to get their hands on a piece of property. Update 3: I didn't plan on updating again, but recent events need to be shared. Jake and Becca did try to take legal action over the lake house, hiring a lawyer who specialized in contesting inheritances. Their plan backfired spectacularly in a way none of us expected. During the legal proceedings, Evidence emerged that Becca had already promised to sell the property to her college friend Monica for $200,000 below market value. She had even accepted a $50,000 deposit, claiming she had full ownership rights. She had drawn up fake documents suggesting she and Jake had complete control of the property. Monica came forward when she learned about the legal battle, worried about losing her deposit. This revelation led to a massive fight between Jake and Becca. Jake had no idea about the deposit or the promised sale. It turned out Becca had been planning to use the money to start her own business, not for their house down payment as she'd told Jake. She had also taken out several credit cards in Jake's name during their short marriage, racking up massive debt with expensive purchases. Their marriage imploded spectacularly. They're getting an annulment just 4 months after the wedding. Jake tried reaching out to me with a long email apologizing for everything. He claimed Becca had manipulated him by playing on his childhood insecurities about our relationship. While I understand he's hurting, Emily and I aren't ready for any contact yet. The things he said about us and the way he allowed Becca to treat Emily can't be erased with one apology. The lake house situation is finally resolved. After the truth about Becca's scheme came out, Jake agreed to sell me his share of the property. I think he wanted to wash his hands of anything Becca had tried to control. Emily and I spent last weekend there cleaning it up. We found some old photo albums in the attic that Dad had made before he died. Emily enjoyed hearing stories about her grandfather and seeing pictures of Jake and me as kids. Becca moved back to her hometown after the annulment but hasn't stopped causing drama. She's telling anyone who'll listen that Jake and I conspired together to ruin her life and marriage. She's even tried to contact Monica to demand her deposit back, threatening legal action. Thankfully, Monica has all their communications documented. The most positive outcome has been Emily's progress. She says watching this situation unfold helped her realize that standing up for yourself doesn't make you a bad person, even when family is involved. She's joined a small photography club at school and is slowly getting more comfortable in social situations, but on her own terms without anyone pushing her. Linda still calls occasionally, trying to broker peace between Jake and me. I've made it clear we need time and space. The family members who initially pressured us have backed off after seeing how everything played out. The cousin who gave out Emily's email sent us a heartfelt apology letter and has become one of our strongest supporters. Emily and I are planning to host a small family gathering at the lake house next summer, but only for those who stood by us through this mess. We're having the locks changed and installing security cameras first, just in case Becca tries anything else. Looking back, I realize that protecting your peace sometimes means letting go of family members who refuse to respect boundaries, no matter how much history you share. Emily and I are doing much better now without their drama in our lives. We're focusing on making new memories at the lake house, ones that aren't tainted by manipulation and betrayal.